Hey guys, Patrick Wind here and welcome to this training model in which I'm going to show you how to plan and set up your A/B testing with our guideline. So in the download section of this video you find this very nice Excel file in which we have already prepared a couple of A/B tests that you should definitely run in your ad account. So before we jump into your ad account and set them up together, I would like to present you the tool in more detail and exactly the thinking behind it and how you should actually use it. So let's get started. So as you see, this Excel file has several lines and several columns, and each line represents one specific A/B test. Okay. For example, this one, the first A/B test that we're going to run, has the identification number 0001, which is very important because this number we're going to include in our ad set name. Okay, this way we can really fastly find it within our ad account, and this helps us to better navigate and have a better structure. So that's the first column, the code. Then of course, when it starts, when it ends, how many days are we actually going to run it, like the 1st, 2nd and 3rd of January, in this case 3 days. How many options are we going to test? So is it just an A/B test? Like in this case, we're testing A versus B, so 2 options. Are we testing even 3 options? So is it an A, B, C test? Okay. And then how much budget do we want to allocate for each of the options per day? Okay. So if we have A and B, so it's 2 options and each of them receive 10 euro per day for 3 days. So the total is of course 60 euro that this test actually is going to cost us. Then in this column, I like to define, is it prospecting or retargeting, or is it a creative, or is it a lookalike audience, is it an interest, or what am I actually testing? So in this case, we're testing 5 different prospecting audiences. 3 of them are based on lookalikes, 2 of them are interest based, so saved audiences. Okay. And then I'd like to point out my hypothesis, because we have already mentioned that our ideal audience size is between 800,000 and 1.5 million people. So if we operate here in Spain, we move between the 3 and the 6% lookalike in Spain. And one hypothesis could be, well, the 3% works better than the 6% because it is much more similar to the seed audience, for example, my purchasers, than the 6%. Therefore, one hypothesis is the 3% works better than the 6%, but this hypothesis is only true in Spain. Okay, and this we're testing it here in Spain, right? Because it could also be that in Germany, for example, the 6% works better than the 3%, and vice versa, and so on. So this test we're starting on the 1st of January, lasts 3 days with 2 options: the lookalike 3% versus 6% in Spain. And we're testing 2 different options, A 3%, B 6%, and then we're going to a different section. The section, what is actually the KPI that I'm taking a look at? So what's the most important number that I want to take a look at? So I mean, of course, it's always ROAS, right? So if some of them brings me sales, that's of course ideal. But it could very nicely happen that imagine I sell a product that costs 100 euros and I run two ad sets, okay, with 10 euro each. So each ad set will only have spent 30 euros. Imagine that my cost per acquisition usually is 50 euros. It's not realistic that I get sales already, but it's still important that I run this test and I already understand, for example, based on the cost per add to cart, which one has performed better, okay. So the ROAS is always nice to include in those tests, but if you sell a product that's high priced, it could very easily happen that you don't derive any sales from that, but you still have a significant difference. For example, imagine the 3% brings me 10 sales and I have spent 30 euros on that, so 10 euro for 3 days, so 30 euros I've spent on this ad set, 30 euros I've spent on this ad set. Here I got 10 sales, here I got only 5 sales. Okay, so the cost per add to cart here would be 3 euros, and here the cost per add to cart would be much higher. Okay, so we can already see that. For example, let's say we got 10 sales, 10 add to carts on this one. on the 3%, so it's €3, and we got only 5 add to carts in the 6%, so it would be €6 cost per add to cart. So we don't have a result C, okay, because we only tested 2 options. So in this specific case, we could clearly say, like, if there was no ROAS, let's put it this way, if there was a ROAS, we could still take a look at that. But the main KPI is the cost per add to cart, and it was double in option B than in A. So a clear conclusion: lookalike 3% works better. Okay. And what I also like to do is I also like to highlight the winner in green or something. This one, so I can clearly see, okay, interesting. In Spain, 3% works better. But parallel, I also like to run another test, like what's actually the perfect nucleus, what's actually the perfect seed audience for my lookalike. Is it purchase, add to cart, or view content? So we're running 3 different options, right? Lookalike based on purchase, lookalike based on add to cart, and lookalike based on view content. And once again, we're mainly focusing here on the KPI cost per add to cart. But if it brings sales, that's of course also interesting. But let's imagine some hypothetical numbers. €9, €6, and €3. So what we learn here is that the lookalike based on view content works the best. Then I would also highlight it this way. However, parallel, I also run another test. You see, I start 5 of them parallel. So the third test I'm running, this one not. Third test I'm running is, for example, here, a lookalike based on the visitors of my website. The top 5% works better than the top 10% or the top 25%. This of course depends on the volume. So if you had a lot of volume on your website, my hypothesis would be that this works better. If you have few traffic on your website, my hypothesis is that this works better. So let's imagine we had a lot of traffic. So my hypothesis stays that the 5% is the best. And what happens? The cost per add to cart was exactly as we expected. Let's say 3, 10, and even and even 15%, €15. So whatever. Okay. And what we clearly learn here is the lookalike based on top 5% works the best. Now I can already put it down. Okay, so these would be 3 options to run A/B tests when it comes to lookalike audiences. However, it's of course very easy to also run A/B tests, for example, identification number 4 and 5 on interest-based audiences. For example, we could test, does it work better for me an audience of people who are interested in smartwatches than people who are interested in Rolex. Let's say I sell my watch not too expensive, so I assume my hypothesis is that people are just interested in smartwatches, works better than Rolex. And the cost per add to cart was here €3, and here it was €8. We didn't have a third option. So yes, my hypothesis is verified. So the interest smartwatch works better than the other one. Let's just write it down like this. And then the 5th option that we have started in parallel was prospecting interest, watches interest plus engaged shoppers behavior works better than watch interest plus page admin, Facebook page admin as a behavior. Let's imagine here this does not hold true. Let's imagine this one even brought a sale. And so let's imagine that the page admin brought 2 sales and also the cost per add to cart was lower. And let's say it's this. And here as a conclusion, I would then write down something like Facebook page admin works better, plus it also brought 2 sales. Something like that. That's why I'm mentioning ROAS. Like if it brings me sales, I always prefer that, of course. But if it doesn't bring me sales, I focus on the upper funnel KPIs, like for example, cost per add to cart. So this would be the first phase this initial phase, so to say, of my A/B testing, and now the important part comes, right? So okay, I have learned that those options work better, okay, than the others, but what do I do now with all of this? Well, I have to iterate, right? And now we start finally with the important iteration phase. Iteration phase. Well, that's super important. What do we do now with this? Well, we have learned that the 3% works better than the 6%. In this specific case, that does not necessarily mean that it's always the case. Depends on your audience, depends on your product, depends on your market especially, okay? But let's imagine this is the case, that we learned that the 3% works better than the 6%. Well, then let's continue with that test and go dive deeper in that. Let's say now we know that 3% is better in Spain. We also know that lookalike based on view content is better. Well, then create a lookalike 3% on view content and assume that it works better than the lookalike 6% on view content, for example, okay? Because here we don't know on which we based it. Like probably we based it on page views, we based it on purchase, we based it on whatever, okay? But here we want to bring everything together and want to improve, okay? So it works better than 6%, and we could also, if you want to, we could also include here a lookalike 4%, okay? And we could, yeah, like the 4%. We could also test that. So we could test lal 3% view content versus lal 4% view content versus lal 6% view content. So you see, this everything here is just a tool to iterate and give us new ideas of new potential lookalike audiences and interest audiences that can help us to find new interesting people. So what else could we do? We have also seen that the visitors by time spent top 5% have worked much better than the 10% or the 25%. Well, but there is still another element, right? We could also test, for example, if this only holds true for top 5%. Yes. If this only holds true if the top 5% was for the past 180 days. Top 5% 180 days works better than the lookalike based on lal. So then the lookalike on the top 5% last 30 days, for example, okay, or even the last 7 days. Let's do 30 days. Here we have lal top 5%, 180. Here we have lal top 5%, 30. Okay, and so on and so forth. This way we can derive always new conclusions, and it helps us to really bring new audiences to the game. And there's another audience that we could now really nicely test in this iteration phase. For example, we have learned that smartwatches works better than Rolex, and the behavior of Facebook page admin works better than engaged shoppers. Well, then of course I would definitely try to combine them. So smartwatch plus FB page admin works better than just watch in general plus FB page admin. Remember, here we tested just watch in general, and here we can go deeper with the smartwatch. Okay, so let's point that also down. Smartwatch plus FB versus just general watch plus FB. Okay, and then we have that run also for a couple of days. And here, what do we learn here? So what did we set up here? 3 options. So it will cost us this. Here we set up 2 options. We also set up 2 options, and this is how the game starts. And then you continue with all the possible options with all the different lookalike audiences, with all the different interest-based audiences, and you iteration. The more you iterate, the more tests you conduct, the more work you put into that, the better your results are going to be. So guys, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I see you in the next video. Thank you. Goodbye.